On a day far from being bright for Earth, creatures emerged from its depths. People called them Reapers, and they quickly destroyed 99% of the planet's population. For reasons unknown, the Reapers don't attack humans at altitudes above 8,000 feet, which allowed a small portion of the population in certain countries to survive. In America, the safe zones turned out to be the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Here, in the settlement of Lost Gulch Refuge, lives a boy named Hunter. One day, he ventured beyond a boundary marked by a blue line on the ground and narrowly escaped a Reaper hunting below the safe threshold. Hunter's father, Will, scolds his son for taking such a risk. Will is particularly worried because Hunter has a lung condition that prevents him from running, and after the death of his wife, Tara, Hunter is the only family he has left. Later, Will tells his neighbor, Katie, that Hunter only wanted to see the neighboring settlement. Katie feels sorry for the boy. There are no other children in their village for him to befriend, and most of all, he misses his mother terribly. Meanwhile, in the yard next door, a woman named Nina is unsuccessfully trying to find a way to kill Reapers. She tests various alloys by crafting bullets and firing them at a piece of Reaper armor. Will remains skeptical of Nina's experiments, often reminiscing about Tara, who left with Nina on a dangerous mission to procure essential chemicals and perished in the jaws of a Reaper. That night, Hunter suffers another attack. Will manages to stabilize him, but he realizes that their stock of necessary medication is nearly depleted. The next day, Will buys macaroni at the local shop, a food item now worth a fortune. Despite the cost, it's Hunter's birthday, and macaroni is his favorite dish. Hunter, however, is curious why his father no longer uses the radio. Will explains that electricity has become a scarce resource and must be reserved for Hunter's life support machine. Will also mentions that the filters for the machine are running low. To replace them, he must travel to the nearest town, located below the safe altitude. Later, Katie, who was Tara's close friend, visits Will. She reminds him that it's Friday, and they reminisce about how weekends used to be before the invasion. Their conversation is interrupted by a gunshot from Nina's yard as she tests another bullet. They exchange glances, surprised at her persistence. That night, Hunter's condition worsens again. Will gives him an injection and barely manages to relieve the symptoms. The following day, Will approaches Nina and announces that he plans to head to the town tomorrow, claiming he knows a safe route. Nina insists there's no such thing. Will explains that the filters in Hunter's device are almost gone, leaving him no choice but to retrieve replacements from a hospital. Nina warns that the journey requires descending through passes patrolled by Reapers. Will then reveals his secret. He plans to use an abandoned mine that cuts through the mountain to reach the town. Nina reminds him that the Reapers originated from underground and that mines are their natural habitat. However, Will insists he knows the mine well and the distance to travel is relatively short. He sets a meeting time for tomorrow, though Nina firmly declares she won't be joining him. After Will leaves, Nina spends a long time staring at a pirate flag banner she had vowed to raise over the mountains once she discovered a way to fight the Reapers. The next morning, Will visits the local gunsmith, who provides him with a rifle and grenades. Although the weapons aren't particularly effective against the predators, they can at least slow them down. The gunsmith shares his personal supplies and wishes Will good luck. Katie arrives, upset that Will hadn't told her about his plans. Despite his objections, she arms herself and declares that she's going with him. Nina greets Katie with hostility, insisting that she's unprepared to face the Reapers, having never even seen one up close. Nina predicts certain death for the group. Will explains his plan. Once they reach a ski slope, they'll use a lift to descend to the mine entrance. He hopes the equipment is intact and that he'll be able to get it working. The group sets off. In response to questions, Nina reveals that she hopes to reach her lab, where she knows the specific chemicals she needs to continue her work. Nina also brings two of her inventions, a compass and a device that can detect Reapers nearby by picking up their high bioelectromagnetic impulses, far stronger than those of any creature on Earth. Soon they reach a fire road about a mile from the ski slope. However, this marks the end of the safe zone. The group crosses the boundary and moves cautiously, weapons at the ready. They come across several wrecked vehicles, scavenging supplies and weapons from them. Katie takes a grenade launcher, displaying her Texan upbringing and skill with such equipment. Meanwhile, Nina discovers a fragment of Reaper scale. As she retrieves it, a heated argument erupts between her and Katie. Katie blames Nina for Tara's death, while Nina dismisses Katie as an inexperienced nuisance. Will intervenes, breaking up the fight, and the group continues toward the abandoned ski area. Suddenly, a distant whinny echoes from the woods, surprising the group with the sight of wild horses now roaming freely in the mountains. Before long, they arrive at the ski resort. The summit and safety are within reach. However, Nina warns that reaching the top is impossible, as a Reaper is already nearby. Will and Nina rush to the backup generators, attempting to power the lift while Katie stands guard with a grenade launcher. She waits for the creature to appear from the forest, but sees no sign of it. Finally, the beast emerges from the tree line. Katie fires, but the grenade misses the agile monster. The Reaper charges toward her. As Will manages to activate the lift, he and Nina leap into the gondola, which begins its ascent. Will fires at the Reaper, giving Katie a chance to climb into the lift tower. She is forced to jump, barely catching hold of the lift seat. The Reaper, undeterred, grabs the cable with its tentacle, snapping it. The group plummets to the ground, narrowly escaping into the safe zone. That night, they rest in an old guardhouse. Katie admits she's terrified, confessing she hadn't realized the nature of their enemy. She now sees the Reapers as perfect predators. Nina shares her perspective. The Reapers don't rest, nor do they consume humans, though they kill them relentlessly. They also leave other creatures untouched, leading her to doubt their biological nature. As the women fall asleep, Will reflects on an argument with his wife. Tara had urged him to trust Nina, claiming she could save the world. Will resented the notion, believing Tara had no business risking her life, especially with her vulnerable son to care for. Nina, having no family, had nothing to lose. But Tara had reminded him that Hunter's filters would eventually run out, and he would die unless they acted. Will had been unable to dissuade her. The next morning, the group arrives at an old mine Will knows well from his time as a miner. However, the lower levels dip below the safe zone, making them vulnerable to Reapers. Moreover, the tunnels are poorly sealed, increasing the danger. Will insists the hazardous area is only 210 meters long, and Nina's tracker should detect any Reapers nearby. But Nina counters that the device won't work underground. Furthermore, humans exhale carbon dioxide, which Reapers can detect instantly. After venting her frustrations with Will, Nina is the first to descend into the mine. Reaching the desired level, they find the passage blocked with welded metal. The only way forward is to descend another level, but this area is undeniably outside the safe zone. Will declares he won't turn back, and the women reluctantly follow. They descend a ladder, with Will urging them to take their time to avoid exhaling too much carbon dioxide. The team pauses for a break before the final push. Katie recounts how, at the start of the invasion, she had fought with her boyfriend, hit him with a frying pan, and driven off in his car, which ultimately saved her life. The group descends to the next level and presses onward. They make it most of the way when a Reaper appears, forcing them to flee. Will tries to shoot the creature, but the bullets fail to deter it. The Reaper relentlessly closes the gap, herding the team into a dead end. Will orders the group to shut off their flashlights and hold their breath. The Reaper's tentacle probes the area, brushing dangerously close to their faces. Will uses a flare to startle the creature, giving the group a chance to bolt toward a partially collapsed tunnel. They scramble inside, but Katie takes a wrong turn and is ensnared by the Reaper's tentacles. Will watches helplessly as Katie is dragged deeper into the mine. Meanwhile, Nina spots a ladder, and the pair climbs to a higher level, barely evading the pursuing Reaper. Finally, Nina and Will emerge from the mine and return to the surface, safely above the boundary of the safe zone. The pair continues their journey and soon comes across an almost intact pickup truck, which they decide to use to travel further. Before setting off, they stop for the night in an abandoned house, where they manage to find some food supplies. During dinner, they reminisce about Tara and Katie. Will regrets taking them through the mine. Nina, however, advises him to channel his anger to fight. She reveals her plan to return to her lab to retrieve magnesium, theorizing that the Reaper's impenetrable scales generate magnetic defensive mechanisms. She believes a bullet containing magnesium could penetrate the armor and kill the creature by igniting an internal fire. Will grows furious, calling her theory unproven and blaming her for Tara's and others' deaths. Nina counters by pointing out that he now faces the same difficult decisions as before. The next morning, they head to the town and reach the hospital, searching for oxygen filters. The building is in ruins and looted, forcing them to climb to the top floor. There, in an operating room, Will finally finds what he needs, but they soon hear the distinct sounds of a Reaper approaching, signaling an imminent attack. The pair runs, but the Reaper catches up and even grabs Will. Nina grabs a fire axe and severs the tentacle, enraging the monster even further. They retreat to the operating room, where Will orders Nina to run while he shoots at gas canisters. The resulting explosion hurls the Reaper out of the window, where it lies motionless below. Having achieved his goal, Will expresses his intent to return to his son. Nina persuades him to help her first, arguing that if she can create the magnesium bullet, humanity might have a chance. She promises to raise her pirate flag as a signal that the Reapers can be defeated, ensuring that Katie's and Tara's deaths won't be in vain. Reluctantly, Will agrees. They travel to Nina's former lab at the U.S. Department of Energy, where she gathers the necessary materials and begins crafting her magic bullet. While guarding her, Will notices a photograph and learns that Nina had a family who perished during the Reaper invasion. She survived only because she was at work. Nina confesses that she blames herself every day for not being at home and regrets not hugging her family one last time. Will tries to console her, saying she couldn't have saved them, but Nina dismisses his words, saying such a life holds no meaning for her. Realizing it will take her much longer to perfect the bullet, Nina urges Will to return to his son, who is running out of time. She promises to keep working and will join him later using her car parked outside. Will reluctantly drives off in the pickup. As Nina continues her work, she notices a power cell, which inspires her to use cobalt instead of magnesium. Just as she finishes the bullet, a Reaper attacks her. Meanwhile, Will speeds down the road when his truck's tires blow out, causing him to crash into a roadside tree. He is forced to run toward the safety line, but the Reapers close in, cornering him just as he nears safety. Will fires his gun, fully expecting to meet his end. Suddenly, a shot rings out, and the attacking Reaper explodes. Nina arrives just in time, wielding her cobalt-infused bullets, which cause the Reapers to detonate spectacularly. Examining the remains, the pair discovers that the Reapers are not biological creatures, but advanced machines of extraterrestrial origin, confirming Nina's theory. However, the reason for the specific safe altitude remains a mystery. They return to Lost Gulch, where Hunter greets his father with delight. Nina raises her pirate flag, signaling to nearby settlements that she has found a way to kill the Reapers. Radio communication is restored, and survivors spread instructions on how to craft the special bullets to fight the monsters. Later, Nina and Will visit a memorial dedicated to the fallen. They leave a bullet at the base of the monument, inscribed with Katie's name. Soon, a team of hunters armed with cobalt bullets sets out on a mission. Explosions echo through the Rocky Mountains as Reapers are destroyed one by one. In a post-credits scene, humans are shown reclaiming their planet. One night, while Nina stargazes through her telescope, Will joins her. Together, they watch as 3 glowing objects enter Earth's orbit. The film unexpectedly turns out better than anticipated for a post-apocalyptic monster movie. However, the origin of the monsters remains unexplained, leaving room for a potential sequel to provide the answers.